Всіх вітаю. Я думаю, що ми можемо
Dear
розпочинати.
participants, welcome. I think we may start. Today we are here again to resume our public program, the program supported by the Urban Coalition for Ukraine, Rosquit. And today we will start this season with the first presentation, or one of the series of presentations we have planned for you. And our first presentation today is about the vision for Mariupol and the future of the city. So today I give the floor to Lilette Bradels to tell us more about the program and our today's event. I would like to remind you that our today's lecture is done in 2 languages, so you have the translation option. If you choose to listen to this lecture in Ukrainian, please choose Ukrainian in the panel below. There is a globe option for interpretation.
On English, please use below panel for English version, please use on panel below an English channel. Тож, Лілет, прошу.
Dear Lilette, you have the floor.
Great, thanks, Margot, and great to see everybody again. Basically, after a very long break we had over summer, we are indeed, as Margot already explained, restarting our series. We have a lecture series and conversation series, and this is the lecture number 15, which actually belongs together to number 16, because we have a topic which we are rather proud as Rosquit, and which is also extensive, and there's a lot to tell about. So we decided actually to break the topic in 2, a vision for Mariupol, and have this week and next week with different focuses on the same study or vision that has been created for over the past year. The team who had been working on it is large. It's around 9 people who have been consistently and very engaged working on this. They will explain a lot more about it, so I'll keep it very short. Just introducing the speakers of today, which is in the order of appearance: Vilko Treffers, Mikola Trivonov, Alisa Alexandrova, and Natalia Kozub. They are part of the team, and for today they will emphasize on the social and cultural aspects that they embedded, let's say, in this vision for Mariupol. I don't think I need to talk a lot longer. Just give the floor to them. Each of them will present a certain aspect of about, let's say, 12 minutes. Please use the Q&A if you want to ask questions, and be aware also on one of the last slides where the team will ask you questions. They actually ask for input on the ideas, because the plan is, you see already a book, it has been created, but that doesn't mean that it's set in stone and that everything is fixed now. So a lot of continuation to the project is going to happen in the coming years, and any input from you as an audience would be highly appreciated. So there will be ample time for that after the presentation to ask questions and get in a conversation with the panelists. So please, Vilko Treffers, if you can start.
Thanks, Margot. Thanks, Lilette. And thanks, visitors very glad that we are here today because it's a very, very complicated matter. I think it was summer 2022 when we started the discussion already about the reconstruction of Mariupol, and the war was going on as it is still, but it was very heavily going on around Mariupol. And is it appropriate to talk about this? Is it good? Does it make sense? Is it of added value to what the people in Mariupol who've been in big tragedies, what they need for help? And yes, we said in the end, it is not easy, but we have to do it because there are other people who must support in military services. There are other people who can support in traumas and in psychological help or in jobs or in new lives. But what we can do is already think about the future and to try to be as prepared as possible when Mariupol is liberated. And this is not just our own idea only. We were supported in this idea by the researchers that we have around in our network of Roskvit, researchers that know all about different cities after the Second World War or after the Yugoslav war, the struggles that those cities had that were not prepared, that didn't have time to think about the future yet, that didn't make any plans or any strategies during the war. And they had a really hard time with building up their new reality after the liberation. For example, in Rotterdam, the invasion in Rotterdam in the Second World War was in 1940. And the first reconstruction plan already started the same year. Some people, some Dutch planners, urbanists, architects, who had fled the country and fled the city, mainly based in London at that moment, they started thinking about how Rotterdam should look like. And also them, just like us with Mariupol, they didn't know exactly how the city looked like in 1940, and they couldn't know exactly how it would look like in 1945. But they already started thinking about it, and it helped Rotterdam to have some understanding of the complexity and some understanding of the challenges and opportunities where the city could lead to after the war. And the same happened actually in Warsaw, in Poland. In 1939, it was invaded, and the first reconstruction plan took like 2.5 years, was made in the beginning of the Second World War. So there was already the outline of some plans. Later, it became more difficult, both in Rotterdam and in Warsaw, because of money, because of continuation, because of uncertainty, how long it would take. But still, there were plans. And we hope for Mariupol to do the same, to make a plan, to make a strategy, to somehow come with this vision for Mariupol that we've laid down in this book, and there's a lot we have to develop there, but we have to somehow to deliver these new visions together with the Mariupol citizens. And it was interesting to see that those Mariupol citizens indeed wanted us to do that. Maybe not the first surveys in the beginning of summer, but already quite soon after summer, there was a clear understanding from the people from Mariupol. Yes, you should already start thinking about the future. Please prepare, because this is the way how we can think of the future also with you, and how we can develop these next steps. And this is a small signature of one of the I.Mariupol centers. I will talk about it later, of a small survey with stickers that has been made. So what can be done now? So the most important parts are to identify the most pressing problems and somehow use the chance to solve them already now. It's pressing problems of the city because of the war, but also problems of the city, maybe that were already there, that we can change. This is the vision of this planning, this urban concept, the architecture, maybe something with mobility, something with culture. But then the second part is what the researchers tell us is that we should try to prepare the legislation to make this possible, because legal issues somehow very often stand in the way of quick reconstruction and implementation of the solutions. And the third part is to create institutions that bring together all those thinkers, think tanks, bureaus, new developers, the politicians, so to somehow have these institutes where it can happen. And all these three things, there's a long way to go, but we're trying to develop them step by step. Because Mariupol City Council has very bravely and successfully also made a plan for Mariupol Reborn. And there is like several steps defined. I'm not gonna detail them all, but several steps defined how Mariupol can be reborn, can be rebuilt in the different moments in time. From writing a vision right now to develop a fast recovery plan for the first days after liberation, understanding what is damaged and what are the losses emotionally, personally, and physically, and then also formulating a strategy for the revival of Mariupol. And in the end, of course, the implementation itself. And that is for sure is the part where most of the money should be needed. Last 9 months, there were 4 teams that have been working on visions of Mariupol. It was the Roskvi team, there was a team called MRIA, there was a big City Lab team, and a Zotov and Code team. And this was not a competition. This was like a way to get from different people who are somehow connected to Mariupol, who had some experience with the city. It was a different ways how to develop ideas for the future. And like I said, again, not as a competition, because there are no winners or losers in this. This was a way how to bring in these ideas. And now, since summer, those 4 teams are merging those ideas. They're trying to bring them together, and they are trying to strengthen each other, question each other, and try to build one team out of 4 teams. All those teams have some background in Mariupol. Also me, I was one of the architects and planners that has been working on Mariupol Vision in 2015, but also in our team, we've got 2 members. One of them is here present and will present after me, who have been working in Mariupol in different positions, also in the municipality for years and years. So we have this strong connection with the city and with the questions that are there. But that's us. That is the people who work on it. But for who do we work? Of course, there's the main group, and that is the residents. Those are the ones that we as a team work for. And in, I think, 16 different interviews, we got the information from the residents, how they experienced their last few days in Mariupol, what they remember, what they want to go back to, how they hope it will look like, what the process will be like, how they can be involved. And those deep interviews were very much helpful for us to understand what is needed. You see some quotes here, but there was a huge support for really starting now and really trying to discuss and visualize the future that they want to live in. Some place that they remember as their home, where they can return to, but also some place that will be even better than it was. And this is because Mariupol is about the people. In our vision, it's definitely the people are, it's a human-centered vision. So we are not, of course, we make pictures with buildings and streets and bridges, but we also constantly try to think from the perspective of the people. So it must become a comfortable, social, meaningful place. And the public space and the buildings facilitate those ambitions. So this is how we look at the project, and we try to understand, okay, what is this people approach, this human-centered urban planning? It's about our activities in public space. It's about the size of buildings and factories or areas, that it's on a human scale, something that we can relate to. It's about the process of collaboration and participation and decision-making, that everybody needs to be involved, because every voice and every person has something to say that we can learn from. It's also about jobs, very much about jobs and economy. It is really that you are not only living there and in retirement, but it's also a place where young people can go, that they start their lives and careers in a way that is as good as it would be in Kiev or abroad or wherever. And there is, last but not least, people approach about comfort. And comfort means not just quality of life, but also the freedom, the safety, the resilience. Also, this word of safety is, of course, in Mariupol case, extremely important. So that means for the human scale, we have these kind of words in our vision: small scale of housing blocks, inclusive neighborhoods, cooperative economy, a multi-economy, not only one economy. And we will hear about that next week. An accessible green-blue network, personal memory and collective history, and the landscape, sensitive materials, the care for the details and reflection on local and personal identities. Those are the kind of elements, that the tools that we can bring in as designers, as visionaries on the future urban network and urban structure of Mariupol. And one of the main things, and it was already a Mariupol quality for the last 8 years, was that we should design public space as one of the first things. Plant trees from the beginning. Start to have these public spaces and public places as a place where people could meet, where they could sit, where it's the advantage of everybody. It can be done relatively quick, and it can be done relatively cheap, and it really binds everything together. This is also a mutual visibility and interaction. It's a place where we could even try to cope with a collective trauma. It's not easy, but you could use public space as places where people could mourn, where they could sit, where they could somehow collectively be. And it must be pedestrian accessible and bike friendly and very much related to the landscape. So we definitely think that this public space is not just a public space. In Mariupol, it's a public space that really relates to the sea and the river banks. And last but not least, we have to create spaces for different scales of public events. It can be very local for a few households until the whole event for the whole city, because this is also what is typically Mariupol as we have seen it in the last couple of years. Freedom and resilience, safety and self-sufficiency. This is what the main thing is, but also the resilience is about energy. It's about renewable energy, decentralized grids. It's about water treatment and hygiene. It's about ventilation in urban context and shade. It can become really, really warm in Mariupol once in a while, and climate-proof buildings, and in the end, integrated mobility concepts on all levels. It sounds, as you see this list like now, as logical, but these kind of lists help us as urban planners to really define, okay, what do we do and what not? And these are the principles that we see in Mariupol from this human perspective. Economy and education will also be handled like next week, but you see all those different clusters, all those different multi-economy, as we call it, that we see as the future for Mariupol. not being dependent only on one or two industries, but a wider range, which we see that is possible, especially also in Mariupol for the future, and possible also in a Mariupol that is clean and close to the sea. Then there is what we call the process. This is about being involved as citizens in the decision making and in the design, maybe on all levels, given a voice, but also consultant for their ideas. Maybe even build together, handling guides for building your own home back, those private homes, that it will make a better street altogether and a better home as well. It's about governance and budgets. This is what we told about the institutes, and it's about a common set of rules for individual freedom. For example, how does this human scale look like? And I think this is the last part of the human scale, a human approach, that we as humans all need a relationship with our house and our city and our neighbors, but very much also a relation to nature. The trees that you can see from your window, the park that you can reach within a couple of minutes walk or maybe less, and the shady footpath that leads to the sea. Those elements are very much nature-related urban planning. You can see as a network, we had this concept to bring this into a network, blue and green, where the rivers and the trees and the parks are connected in a smart way. This is my introduction. It's always a difficult topic to talk about Mariupol and to give presentations about Mariupol, because we, as a team, we know how it was before 2022. And I give the floor to Mikola to tell a little bit more about this part.
Доброго дня. Для того, щоб дізнатися,
Dear
яким
participants, welcome. To understand what Mariupol was before 2022, you need to look back. And this understanding of the past will give us the hope for the future. You need to understand how to make it people-centered. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so Mariupol used to have 560,000 people. Around 100,000 were IDPs from Luhansk and Donetsk regions. When the first war started in 2014, they moved to Mariupol and became its residents. 40% of the city budget, which was around $140 million annually, 40% of this budget was used to invest into the city development, to build new infrastructure, parks, and to satisfy all the requests of the residents. I think you know that Mariupol used to be a big port because it was one of the coastal cities of the Azov Sea, and the Azov Sea was a very attractive location for the residents of Mariupol. The Azov Sea gives us a lot of potential, and besides, Mariupol had heavy manufacturing, and it was manufacturing 12 million tons of steel per year, and it means that Mariupol provided a lot of jobs. Yes, the economic of Mariupol was focused on this, and practically each resident had a family member working in one of these huge plants. So for Ukraine, it meant that Mariupol gave Ukraine 6% of its GDP and 7% of foreign exchange earnings. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, the budget of the city was not very huge, but when the new team came to the municipality, the budget was started to grow, and this budget was used to build new schools, new kindergartens, new roads. If you have a look at this diagram, since 2015, when this new team started working in Mariupol, the budget of the city grew practically fivefold till 2021, and the development budget has increased 27-fold, because this is huge growth, because it means 40% of the share of the development budget in the budget balance, and there is no other city in Ukraine that could boast the same. So the investment that we got, 200,000 millions, millions of euros were used for investment. Next slide, please. To focus on the big infrastructural objects and on investment, the residents had number one priority need of water supply, and so the investment provided by the French government, 96.4 million euros, was used to provide water supply and to construct filtration plants. We also got some funding for transportation reform of the city. More than 30.5 million euros were used to purchase new buses, new trolley buses, and we used it to reconstruct the transportation depot. We were planning to build a new landfill and to build a waste processing plant to follow the European practices. We were planning to reform outdoor lighting, for it both to be modern and energy efficient. We were also planning to reform heat supply and to use the waste heat of the metallurgy plant to, next slide please, to heat the residential buildings. These were the plans. To talk about the key projects implemented in the city during the 5 years in the period of 2016-2021, we used the investment and the the European Bank of EBRR and other donors to invest into the key projects. For instance, to reconstruct our cardiological hospital, then to transform an abandoned cinema into an administrative service center. And this project was recognized to be the best European administrative building in 2019. We also used this investment to create a new, reconstruct the Veselka Park, to reconstruct the Veselka Park, and we did it taking as a sample the very famous Dutch tulip park. We have reconstructed our historical tower, and we have transformed it into a historical cluster city of Mary for the residents of Mariupol. We have reconstructed Freedom Square, and this Freedom Square got, next slide please, got another architectural prize, and also we have created the ICE complex. Next slide, please. Also, if you have a look at this slide, we have transformed a library in downtown area, which was transformed into an IT hub. So we have combined a classical library with an IT hub for young people. We have rebooted utility companies to foster waste management, and this transformation became a best practice upscaled in other cities of Ukraine. And we have reconstructed the pier, and we have introduced modern municipal public transport and started the project implementation of drinking water from the tap. Next slide, please.
I think there is some delay with Mikola and the train. I don't hear him anymore. So I'd take over a few slides until he's back on track. So maybe... Oh, too bad. I'll tell about projects of the municipality related to all kind of cultural and educational facilities, renovation of schools and kindergartens, quite a few. There was a renovation of cultural facilities and sports facilities, and reconstruction of beaches and the historical part of the city. So these were all those key projects on basic level for all residents in general neighborhoods in the city that Mariupol was working on and has developed, has finished. But there was also a strategy, the strategy for the future that they developed, and they officially stated this strategy in 2021, that there were 14 new directions to work and a large number of indicators. So they were really trying to match their own work according to clear targets and clear indicators, and 90% of that has been completed until 21. And they were doing a new one, making a new strategy until 2040. So that was like a huge new step into development of Mariupol. So the pictures you've just seen were actually only the beginning. Because what didn't get built, but what was literally in the pipeline, where partly also funders were already there, was a medical campus, was more reconstruction of more beaches that was partly ready. There was a Ukrainian house in the middle of town. There was a port of cultures as a museum, which has been organized by in a competition that has been organized in 2020, I remember. There was a new techno park with a lot of new jobs, and there was an aqua park, as we know it from several other cities. All those projects were planned, were pretty much almost financed, and then should be built in the years now. But we all know what happened. Difficult pictures to see still of buildings that we totally ruined and shot. From the drama theater and the city center main street to general housing buildings. And as you can see on the map, 95% of the housing stock is damaged in different scales of damages, but there's a huge amount really, really, really destroyed. 50%, probably even more, are not in any way subject to restore. So they are not able to be restored. And that is the situation as we have it right now. This project
Якщо можна, я продовжу, Фулка, я доєднався.
Так.
Fulgo, I'm taking over. So today Mariupol has two components of the project. The first is the humanitarian component, and it means setting up humanitarian centers I.Mariupol, which are now working in 64 cities of Ukraine. I have mentioned the population of the city. Around 150,000 population now moved to other cities. Some people are now living in Russia. Some people are now living in Europe, all over the world, in Canada, Australia, other countries, to help bring Mariupol residents together. Mariupol municipality has set up humanitarian centers, I.Mariupol, and these centers provide social aid to Mariupol residents. The second project is the Mariupol Reborn, which focuses on the vision of the future of Mariupol after the war, so that the residents of Mariupol could return back to their native city and plan their future life. And this Mariupol Reborn project consists of several parts, including the urgent action strategy, and it envisages urgent interventions to support the Mariupol residents who are staying in Mariupol or who are planning to return to Mariupol, so that we could plan together a modern, people-centered city. And here, Mariupol Reborn, in this way, is an urbanistic project. And next slide, please. As I said, I.Mariupol support centers are opened in 22 cities of Ukraine. They are supporting our residents of Mariupol who move to other cities, providing them with social and humanitarian support. You can see on slide that 8,000 tons of additional aid was received. The trucks that carried this aid had to cover 68,000 kilometers of roads. We have helped to create 375 jobs for Mariupol residents. Next slide, please. And this is what I.Mariupol centers are about. These are the employees. Next slide, please. Next slide. Let us discuss now urban fabric of Mariupol. The first thing we're thinking about when we talk about urban fabric is the development. But in Mariupol, it is best to start with ruptures of urban fabric. Next slide, please. Well, a characteristic feature of Mariupol from the urban planning point of view is the railroad that goes along the sea line. This used to be one of the catalysts of the development of Mariupol. It was a catalyst for the emergence of a Mariupol port, which services the Donetsk, the Donbass, Donetsk basin, co-basin. And so we cannot move this railroad because the removal of this road requires tunneling and is not cost efficient. Next slide, please. So the emergence of Mariupol port and the location of Mariupol between the deposits of ore, iron ore, and the Donetsk coal basin made it extremely attractive for metallurgy, and So in our case, industrialization usually is associated with the Soviet Union, but Mariupol emerged much earlier because the first plant to emerge in Mariupol was transported from America in a disassembled state, and it was transported together with the two blast furnace engineers, the Kennedy brothers. And another plant was founded by a Belgian company. It was called Forge de la Providence. And the merge of these two manufacturers gave us Illich metallurgic plant. And due to the difficult terrain of the city and the proximity to water, next slide, please. This became a great place for metallurgy, but it also hurt ecology very much because the historical city center was covered with soot, dust, and smoke, and also the plant area is an extremely polluted land, and it also changed the sea line because the sea line was used to build the settling ponds, and this stimulated the erosion of the right bank and the silting of the land bank. So the two plants, Illich plant and Azovstal plant, were the main polluters of the air of Ukraine, and this caused a lot of protests, and finally the modernization of these plants started, and it continued till 2021. And at the same time, these two plants provided 15,000 jobs apart from all 25,000 people, apart from other jobs created in the city. And the products, next slide, please. The products of these plants were famous all over the world. And so today, when we are talking when we have talked about what the city was formed about, let's discuss its history. It got the status of the city only in 1779, but it existed much earlier, and the first archaeological finds show that it existed in the Stone Age and the late Bronze Age. And here, this was the location of one of the oldest Cossack relics in Ukraine, and you can see that in black the outline of the historic city, which was formed in the late 18th century, and it was called Kalamius Palanka. And then the city started growing. It started engulfing the adjacent villages. Industry gave rise to settlements of workers, and then it was fortified with Soviet development, and this is when the city gained its modern development. Next slide, please. Here you can see the density of the population along the city, because Mariupol is a polycentric city. You can see the local centers formed closer to the plants, and the new development was erected on the outskirts. Next slide, please. To understand the city better, I would give you a few illustrations about various typologies. This is the illustration of the historic center built with 2 4-story buildings. Next slide. This is the private sector. Next slide. These are the workmen settlements. Up to 4 slides. Next slide, please. These are Khrushchevkas, mid-20th century. Next slide, please. And this is the outskirt of the city. And next slide, please. So Mariupol was damaged very brutally. There are micro districts which were fully destroyed in the left bank, and this historical center of the city is destroyed, and there is no military logic under the ruinations. This is what we call herbicide, and this is a practice of deliberate ruination of civil infrastructure to eliminate any future for the city, to erode social connections, to fragmentate the population. This is exactly what is happening in this city. Next slide, please. If you look at the city population, presently they say that the city now numbers 100 to 150,000 people, and we are expecting after the war to get the population of up to 250,000 people. It means that it will be half of the pre-war population of Mariupol, and it will be a bit more still to be accommodated by the housing stock. Next slide, please, that exists now. So this is how Mariupol could look like after deoccupation. This will be a network of residential nodes formed by mostly private housing. These will be the sites with the potential for regeneration, and these will be the places where you could restore your own house if you get professional aid and building materials. And why we need to support these nodes? Because they need efficient transportation to connect the city into one network. Why we are discussing this as a probable approach? We are not going to reconstruct the city from scratch. We are going to return the population to the places they could recognize. So it is very important to discuss ownership here, to discuss recognizability, and to give some physical clear landmarks like the infrastructure that is there. So the psycho-emotional aspects must also be rather important factors for urban development. Next slide, please. So today we can discuss the possible principles of working with the urban fabric. We are not showing you any ready-made projects. These are our thoughts, which we are going to provide for future discussion so that we could continue working. Next slide, please. Here you can see the downtown area, and we have identified the activity zones connected by pedestrian and bicycle routes. And you can see here some minor nodes which are working as the stepping stones. It means that to get to another node of activity, you are going through a number of other places of activity, localities of activities, and this connects the whole city together. We are planning to put transportation outside the city center. We are planning to make the city center pedestrian. Next slide, please. And here you can see the same principle working on a larger scale. So these activity zones can be grouped around certain territorial stakeholders. for instance, office centers, universities, a hospital, a museum. It could be such social structures. And these activity zones connected by one route will hold the whole city together, and it would provide a new outline for it. Next slide, please. We are proposing to restore everything that is restorable, to keep the authenticity of the city under the Venice Charter, and the new development should facilitate the progress of the city, but not come into conflict with the existing urban fabric. Next slide, please. Also, the road network should be preserved in the center of Mariupol because it has been there for several centuries, but its profile must be updated, giving priority to micromobility and public transportation. Next slide, please. To encourage the development of sustainable mobility, it is necessary to activate the facades and place public functions on the ground floors. Next slide, please. It is important to understand that the city is not going to be restored in one moment, momentarily, and we must have a holistic picture of it, because even ruined buildings could be integrated in the urban fabric, becoming memorials which could continue its existence till they will be reconstructed to accommodate other functions. Next slide, please. And this is the center of the city, and this illustration is not accidental because it illustrates how we are planning to work with memories. Since the foundation of Mariupol, this was the site for a church that was destructed in the 1930s. Then it was succeeded by a cemetery of German officers after the Second World War, and then the cemetery was destroyed to give place for the Mariupol theater. Now you know that the occupants are dismantling the drama theater, continuing the Soviet tradition. You can see this Soviet practice for yourself, the practice that destroys all the evidence of tragic events. We cannot have it. We cannot practice the same approaches. We have to work with memory, facilitating it and making it a participatory project. And the experts working on it should not be just architects. These should be historians. These should be specialists in working with the Hromada. And this practice, on the one hand, should be a healing practice. On the other hand, it should be a very serious research project, which should be overseen by a specialized institution. And only then this will yield us a high quality public space, which shows all the layers of history. Next slide, please. Finally, let's talk about reconstructing housing. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. To formulate the principles of the reconstruction of the development, housing development, we have chosen the left bank plot. Here you can see the way this microdistrict looked before the war. This is a beautiful location on a hill above the sea, but this microdistrict has all the disadvantages of typical Soviet microdistricts. These streets encircle the microdistrict, and so the commercial functions exist only on the perimeter of the microdistrict. There are no jobs apart from minor business, minor commercial functions. And this microdistrict is heavily damaged now. In the middle of the microdistrict, there is no parking, there are no yards, there are huge expanses of land between the houses. So the college plot is occupied by a monofunction. When there is no studies, then this area is empty. Next slide, please. Here you can see that we tried to pinpoint several types of typologies characteristic for Mariupol. Here we have private houses, 5-story Khrushchevkas, lawn, 12-story houses of the Soviet period. We have some 14-story development of later era. And this plot is close to the Azovstal and to the sea. In spring 2022, it was shelled both from the sea and bombarded from the aircraft, and we have horrible devastation on this plot. Stalin houses had wooden structures which was burnt to the ground, and we understand the Stalin development will not be reconstructed due to the extent of the damage. Also, you can see that the facades burnt out, and they were subjected to weather conditions and precipitation, and so the constructive elements between the panels holding panels together are rusted, and these houses will have to be dismantled. Also, we have 5-story Khrushchevkas, which are presented by a very low quality series, because its bearing walls are arranged in such a way that they cannot be replanted. So we suggest we will demolish Khrushchevkas too. So our approach to dismantling is that we must restore everything that can be restored, but it must be economically viable, and we must reconstruct such heritage. Next slide, please. The new layout for the microdistrict combines the reconstructed previous development and new development. Here you can see that instead of one microdistrict, we have a cluster of open blocks around 100 meters in length, and the sustainability here is provided by good street infrastructure and good density, mixed land use, and a combination of various income families. And next slide, please. No, the previous, please. Yeah. Why we have suggested the block as our unit? We have looked at the best practices from other countries, but why the block? It's not the block that is important, but the street infrastructure, which makes the ground floors accessible and stimulates economic activity. It sets apart the infrastructure for cars from the rest of the participants of the traffic. It separates private yards from public spaces, and it creates the sense of urbanity. And there is a request for that, but it is present only in older cities in Ukraine. Next slide now. Safety, it's a very important issue. We stop at 6 layers in our development because it allows us to evacuate the population in 2.5 minutes. And also when we make the houses, locate the houses in a more dense way, this reduces the casualties in case of explosions. And we supply them with underground shelters, next slide please, which could be used also as parking. The microdistrict used to have so many empty places, even when we have limited the number of layers. We increase the density and increase the number of functional premises, which could be used for social, cultural, and other functions. So the mixed development is the basis for 15-minute city. The problem of Soviet dormitory districts is the absence of jobs, but our reconstruction provides more jobs to eliminate the mistakes of the past. And we provide jobs next to the residential housing. Next slide, please. Social mix. Soviet development was uniform, but sustainable development means that we must unite various social groups within one area, residential area, and so to provide some typologies for all social groups, we must provide not only blocked houses, but atrium houses, urban villas, gallery houses, and we will provide such diversity by splitting the blocks into smaller plots, smaller sites for development, and it will attract all sorts of companies, building companies to our market. And this planning solution is not going to be all-purpose and universal. It's just to illustrate the sustainability principle in construction, but we must also take into account the individual context, because here we didn't have an opportunity to ask the residents what kind of district they would like to live in the future, because we understand, next slide please, that to make our project realistic, we must engage the people into it. City growth, in 10 years, our target indicator is to have 400,000 people, and when we build new districts in the industrial areas, we would like to keep the density up to 27,000 people per hectare, and to keep 40% of residential development at that. And in Mariupol, private sector was rather developed, and private sector gives us 35% per hectare, and this is incomparable with the indicator that we have set according to the existing standards. The density is regulated naturally. Sometimes it was chaotic, yet we can stimulate it by targeted municipal policies. And I guess that this is what we have to have. Next slide, please. The city can grow, of course, it can sprawl, but we suggest to de-densify its outskirts and to intensify its sea line and historic center. And this will allow us to construct the 15-minute city, which is comfortable and efficient. After reconstructing Azov Steel, for instance, we can use the location and change the density accordingly, and we can connect the urban fabric along the sea line. And next slide, please. And this will be the end of our presentation. So we have questions also for you. Next slide, yeah. Here are our questions.
Thank you so much to the whole team for this in-depth explanation of all your plans and the backgrounds behind it. I think it was very insightful. We have about a little bit over 20 minutes left to address questions from both sides. So maybe the attendees indeed can read the questions who are here now, but maybe also have questions themselves. So if you have any, please, Julie Lawson, I saw raising her hand, and at the moment there's already one question in the Q&A. So maybe we start with that first. You can ask it either in Ukrainian or in English version. Ying Zhang is asking if there are any considerations or strategies to position new Mariupol better to defend against invasions. Are you maybe seeking input from the military? Would that be helpful? I don't know who it is addressed to or who feels the best to answer this question. Would be Mikola maybe, but I don't know if he's still in the train.
Давайте я спробую.
Yeah, I will try.
Great.
The safety issue and security issue in Ukraine is not a question to the municipality. We are providing technical conditions for our residents by building shelters under houses, by reducing the number of layers in our development. But to make Mariupol safe, we must finish the war. And we must have some political mechanism which will ensure peace. So urban planners cannot answer this difficult question, which is a key question for Mariupol residents. And it is a key question to bring them back to Mariupol. Thank you very much for this political question. It is very urgent. I agree.
Okay. Maybe Julie, you can ask the question yourself.
Yeah, I have a question. I'd really love to learn.
Da.
I'd really like. You can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Good. Can you elaborate on some of the land policy tools that the city can use to make interventions, for example, in acquiring sites for a public purpose or reassembling them, readjusting them into a form that it can utilize for a public purpose, and what interventions, for example, it could use in, say, conditional leasing of lands for perhaps less commercial but needed activities. So I'm just wanting to hear what sort of tools can the city use in its land policies to promote the diversity, the natural spaces you mentioned, but also the mix of housing types, for example, affordable rental, to ensure that is there for a more mobile and perhaps lower income or medium income and young families who may not want to take the risk of, say, home ownership. So what role can it play more actively through its land policies?
Shall I try?
Yeah.
And please fill up with other ideas after I finished the rest of the team. I would say we were in the first question that we got was try to grasp the bigger picture of this new city. Try to grasp it in terms of economy, culture, architecture, nature. Try to have this bigger plans as we need to visualize it. This was the first stage. I think now these questions, as you asked them, they are very important, but we didn't we touched them, but we didn't really come up with solutions for that. And one of the reasons for this is that it needs to be regulated also by state law, not only in the municipality. So some of the questions you ask, what kind of land use, home ownership, maybe how the money flows, are questions we also have. Natasha showed some of the ideas we're having about the different building blocks, and that could be built in another way. In one of the other slides, it was meant this do-it-yourself approach. But for all these, let's say, physical appearances, and we need the right legislation, and we need the right flow of money to the right people. So actually, this is the next question for us, and I'm very glad that you bring it up. And I'm very glad that this presentation somehow, both in the military strategy and this housing strategy, leads to the next step, because that is helping us as well.
Thanks for your answer.
Margot, will you take the one in the Q&A, Ukrainian?
Так, звичайно. Маємо від пані
No
Олени.
problem. Yep. We have a question from Ms. Olena Pilipenko. Comment also, excellent project, beautiful solutions. Speaking about the war in Mariupol, before the war, Mariupol had plants and they provided jobs. Do you have any understanding what kind of jobs you're going to supply in Mariupol after the war? Mykola Trifonov answers, we have it in our project. We will present this social part of our project next week. So this is a question for next week. Now, I'm not going to make a comment, give you an answer. We had an expert who is dealing with the jobs and urban economy. I think you will get an answer next week. He will join and you will be able to hear his personal answer to your question.
Well, this is the best cliffhanger of a lecture series that you can imagine, Mykola. Thanks for that. Now, everybody needs to come next week. Are there already people who have some thoughts on the question that you raised? And in the end, I will also, there's a Google form being created with some questions that the panelists would, or the total team actually would love for you to have a look and answer. We will throw it in the chat. Can do that already now. But maybe somebody has some thoughts already on one of the issues raised on the slide that is still up.
Я також бачу руку.
I can also see a hand raised by Ms. Polina. I think we can give her the floor to ask a question.
Yes, let's do. Polina?
Добрий вечір, мене чутно?
We can hear you. Yes. I had a question. Do you have already any algorithm how to combine the reconstruction process and the process of returning Mariupol residents with the process of post-war research of various processes that are going to be there in the city after the war? I liked the idea very much that certain ruined objects will stay for some time to be memorials till they are reconstructed or removed. But my question would be how to make it efficient, how to make the city comfortable for the residents who are returning to Mariupol, for them to get this feeling of home regained, because the reconstruction process will take a long time. How to combine the things happening to the residents and the things happening to the overall research and the healing of traumas in Mariupol.
Who
Who wants to start? Alisa, Natasha, or
Kaki?
Well, there are several approaches to working with memorialization. On the one hand, some people try to preserve everything that is left. Others want to build everything from scratch. I guess that neither of the approaches is applicable. As I have already said, we must have a certain institution who will supervise this. This institution must come to the city right after the deoccupation and start working with the residents before building certain museums or memorials. And we are not suggesting keeping many ruined buildings. We suggest selecting things that must be conserved for the community to heal its traumas. But at the same time, we must provide the population with high quality infrastructure and arranging reconstruction within this city so as to deoccupy the city psychologically and provide the population as soon as possible with safe routes which would cross the city and enable traffic in the city, and to make the ruinations, the zones which were ruined, safe, and also, of course, green infrastructure must be supported from the very start. Building parks is as important as building residences. This will be a specific part of our work, but we need to ask the residents definitely what they need to feel at home. Thank you very much.
I would even like to add the idea of this institute and how the residents would be involved in this institute. That is not only asking them the question what they would like and when they feel at home, but being more involved than that, making decisions, being part of that institute, working there like they do in the I.Mariupol centers. I think that is an amazing example what Mikola showed, that we can also export into the moment that the occupation has been developed, arranged. So very much thanks for this question, and it leads to more ideas for the next steps.
Додам трохи до відповіді Фулко. Ми
I
розуміємо,
would like to add something to Fulko's answer. Actually, it is very difficult, will be, to return people to Mariupol. But Fulko mentioned I.Mariupol centers. I.Mariupol centers not just help Mariupol residents, it unites them, consolidates them, builds a network of our residents. We understand that some people will forever stay in Europe. Some people will settle in other Ukrainian cities. Some people will return to their native Mariupol. And we must understand that new people are also coming to Mariupol, people who are going to reconstruct the city. Mariupol needs to create more jobs. Mariupol needs to help itself. And Mariupol needs to become a magnet for other people. Thank you very much for that.
And I see, I continue here if I can, the question that Dominique Codelin is asking. And what I see is the idea that people who are returning to Mariupol, the residents, if they can participate in the design and the rebuilding of the city. And yes, I think that it would be amazing. I think it would be important. I think it would help. I think it would raise the quality and also the quality of the city, but also the quality of a comfortable and recognizable life that they have built it and designed together. One of the ideas was already mentioned in the presentation, to have some kind of guidebooks for do-it-yourself repairments or do-it-yourself buildings even, which can be part of that development, where the residents can support in making these guidebooks, but maybe even also support in building it together. And then the new Mariupol style of private houses could be developed from that point on. So very interesting kind of questions about how the involvement of the people can be continued. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I think that is actually also answer to the question that was in the Q&A just now, relating on the same topic. So I suggest we take one last one from the audience for now, and then continue next week. So yes, please.
Так, добрий день, добрий вечір вже.
Good evening, Vlad Kostenko. I actually didn't want to ask a question. I wanted to respond to your questions. These questions are extremely important. It's really cool that you are asking us these questions. And these were my questions too. When I was analyzing all the 4 concepts of rebuilding Mariupol, I would like to answer 2 questions out of the ones that you have suggested. How do you see the further future enterprises in Mariupol? We have understood already that if we are not rebuilding Azovstal on its present location, then maybe we should preserve this industrial location as a memorial to something that was there before it was ruined. And as for the Illich plant, I think we must have only green metallurgy in Mariupol after the war, but we should keep the steel industry in Mariupol, and because it is a city-forming industry, and I guess that we must keep the industrial component of the city economy. It will be extremely important for post-war Mariupol. The second question I would like to respond to, I think it is an extremely difficult question. What to do with the cities which are now built by the Russians? In my opinion, there are so many aspects to this problem. The first thing is what they are doing with the city center, with the Stalinist architecture ensemble around the drama theater. Now they are reconstructing it. We have seen these buildings when they were burned. Practically now they are all restored. Maybe they just took a different color. And I don't think that the reconstruction is done in the low standard, but we're not happy with this reconstruction. So in this aspect, I think maybe we should keep the reconstructed buildings. Maybe we should really tweak the historical nuances that were not reconstructed yet. But a much more negative tendency is when the Russians are reconstructing Mariupol schools. I think they have reconstructed already around 10 schools, but these reconstruction projects are extremely low quality. They are using very low quality materials, and they are the projects which are typical for Russia. And these projects do not meet the modern educational needs. And I'm absolutely positive that the things they are doing to our schools must be eliminated. We will be reconstructing our schools and you. Thank you very much. I guess this is a wonderful way to finalize our lecture, to get not only the answers from the team, but also to get the answers from the Hromada, because this means real participation. As we mentioned, reconstruction is not the business of the experts. Reconstruction is the business of the Hromada. You can find the questionnaire in our chat. Our team will be extremely grateful for your feedback. Please fill it in, and let's see each other next week to talk about other aspects of this project.
Yes, I can only agree to that. Fantastic! Thank you all so much for being here, presenting it, for all the work you have done over the years, and yeah, we are very curious to hear next week, which will be indeed about the economic factors, the ecological factors. So there are two more topics to be covered. We will have also other members of the team, so we will see again Vilko Treffers and Alice Alexandrova, but also Nathan Hudson, Dmitro Gurin, and Mikita Buryokov. So looking forward a lot. Thank you. Have a great night, and till hopefully next week, same time.
Побачимось наступного тижня та реєстрація на наступну.
See you all next week, and please don't forget to register to our next lecture. You can find the link in all our social nets and on our site. Goodbye. See you next week.